Hello and welcome. When you're thinking about putting a dash cam in your vehicle, are you thinking about the back of your vehicle or the front? How many accidents do you think take place behind you rather than in front of you? Have you ever thought about that? We're going to talk about that a little bit and some recommendations on how to handle it in this video, but we're not going to do it in here. Let's go out for a drive and we'll talk about it out there. So, back to that question. What's the percentage of collisions that involve the rear of a vehicle? Here in the US, the answer is 31%. So that's nearly 1/3 of all collisions involve something hitting the back of something else. So with that in mind, the obvious thing to do is, well, get one of those combo dash cams, one of those dash cams that has a camera at the front and the back in one unit, and then you just hang it off your mirror or something like that, and that can then record the front and back. Well, there are some advantages to those. The first one is cost. Typically, you see those units like 130, 140 bucks upwards, whereas if you buy two separate cameras, you're probably spending quite a bit more than that. And the second one is simplicity of installation. You only got one cable to deal with. You've got one unit, there's a camera on both sides of it, you have one connecting cable for power, and that's it. You don't need anything else. Now there are some downsides to having a combo front and rear dash cam in one unit. The first is, really, it's down to placement. Actually, the first two issues come down to placement. Just by its nature, where you place it has got to have visibility front and rear. I have my front camera, my 67W from Garmin, tucked up under the mirror. It's just slightly out of shot for you here. So I can't see it. From where I am right now, it's hidden behind the mirror. It's completely out of the way. There are some states where that's important. There are some states that do not allow you to have something in the line of sight of the driver anywhere on the windshield. There are actually some states where you're not allowed to fix it to the windshield, period, and I think that's for the same reason. I'm not in a state like that, but common sense tells me I don't really want it blocking my view, so I can't see it at all because of where it is behind the mirror. If I was going to have a front and rear facing camera, I couldn't have it behind the mirror because then the rear camera wouldn't be able to see anything. So you have to have it in a more obvious place. But at the same time, the unit is more bulky because it has a front and rear camera. I know some manufacturers would disagree with that, but it's true. Inherently, you're going to have two cameras, therefore you're going to have a more bulky unit. And it's going to have to be in the line of sight of the driver, like hanging off the mirror or hanging somewhere else on the windshield. So that's the first issue I have with it. The second issue is probably my biggest issue with front and rear combo units, is just, again, because of the way they work, they will be looking at the front and rear and the inside of your car or truck because of where they're placed. If a camera is here, then that is going to be looking at the interior of the vehicle as well as what's happening outside of it. Now, there are some applications where that is of interest or is useful. If you're an Uber driver, for example, I'm not an Uber driver, and my truck or my car, they are not, I don't really want to be filming what's happening on the inside of them. Firstly, 80% of the time, it's just me. I don't want to film me. I don't want to, especially if it ends up being my last few moments. So now, separate front and rear cameras, and full disclosure, this is what I have in my vehicle right now. So I have, well, let me start with what I have then. So I have a dash cam 67W from Garmin up front, which is the one behind my rear view mirror. I did a separate video on that, which a lot of you liked and a lot of you have watched, so thank you for that. I also have a Garmin Dashcam Mini 2 sitting on my rear windshield, recording what's happening out the back of my truck. Now, in a case like mine, or a case that I would recommend to you, you put a 67W or one of the other, let's say, larger dash cams up front from Garmin. You put the Mini 2 on the back. You don't need GPS on the Mini 2 because you've already got the GPS data from the camera that's sitting on the front of your windshield. So there you go. So that's what I have right now. So the advantages of this setup are, firstly, it's much more discreet. One's under the rear view mirror. I can't see it at all. The other one is tucked up in the corner of my rear window on my F150 here. If I look to the side, I can see it in my rear view mirror. There's a light on it that tells me it's recording. But apart from that, you wouldn't really notice that it was there. And especially if you turn all those annoying beeps and warning sounds off, which I do, and I highly recommend you do, you just don't know it's there. What are the downsides of having 2 units? Well, firstly, it's more expensive, okay? The 67W, I think retails right now for about $230, something like that, $230. The Mini 2 is normally $130. I've seen it for $100 on Amazon occasionally. They will do deals like Black Friday deals and so forth, and Garmin dash cams do get discounted, and I have seen the Mini 2 for $100. The other downside is you have to install 2 units, and while the actual installation is dead easy, you do have to install 2 cables. And that's probably the biggest turn off for most people, especially if you're going to do it yourself, is you need to wire up 2 separate cables. Here's how I did this. The front camera, the 67W, is on a dedicated cable that's permanently wired into my F150, and it's called the Garmin Parking Guard camera. Talked about Parking Guard in the other video. I'm not going to talk about it in this one. But that cable, that's another $34, so that hurts, and it does add quite a bit to the overall cost of this system. But it meant that I could use a couple of adder fuses to connect it directly to the fuse box in the passenger footwell in this 2021 F150, and it was pretty straightforward. Did a separate video on where I put the wiring for that, so do check that out if you're interested. For the rear camera, that was one of the things that put me off getting a rear camera for quite a while, is the fact that with the parking guard cable, I think that is long enough to run from the rear of a pickup truck to that front passenger footwell for the fuse box again. But when you're only paying $80 for a camera, I didn't really want to buy another $35 parking guard cable. And as I said on my original review video, with a truck that's relatively new, it's 2 years old now, but I bought it new, I don't really want to be putting no-name wiring into the permanently wired into this truck. I want to at least have something with a brand, so that if something goes wrong with that wiring, at least there's somebody I can go talk to. The Mini 2 comes with 2 USB cables. One of them is quite short. You'd use it to connect to your computer or something to program it or charge it. Actually, no, there's no charging, no battery. But it came with a longer one too, that I think is about 16 feet long. That has meant I didn't need to buy a parking guard cable. I just used that USB cable that came with the Dashcam Mini 2. So I'll do a separate video if you wanted. Let me know in the comments below if you do. So would I buy a combo front and rear dash cam? No, I wouldn't, for the reasons I've given before. My recommendation would be to do what I've done here, to get a reputable brand, and Garmin is a reputable brand. Have at least a dash cam on the front of your vehicle, ideally with one with GPS, but if you don't want to spend the money, just get the Dashcam Mini 2. Now that I know the statistics, I think I would also recommend you have one front and rear, just because 2 out of 3 incidents involve the front of your vehicle, 1/3 of them involve the rear. And when you get into the Garmin Drive app, which I'm not a fan of, you can download the footage from both cameras and you can combine them into a picture-in-picture clip. So I hope this was useful, I hope this is relevant. If it was, please like and subscribe. Love all the comments I get on these other videos, so if you've got some comments, feedback, thoughts on this one, or just some questions on how to wire it up or how to install it, put it in the comments below.